journey today is a rather interesting one because we were leaving for a village situated in the East Jaintia Hills district, some 130 kilometers from Shillong, located besides the Lukha River, also known as the Blue River. It's a long way to Sonapyrdi, also commonly referred to as Sonapur. The ride takes us through the picturesque green hills and valleys of Khasi Jaintia Hills by passing Joai at Thalasken Lake and continuing past Yalong, Tuber and Lad Rimbai. Once a year, during the winter months, the Lukha River all along the Lomshnong and Sonapyrdi area turns blue due to the pollutants and the waste products that flow into the river from the coal and limestone mining activities. However, the residents of Sonapyrdi are optimistic that the beauty and lush green environment surrounding the area is an asset to the village and can be a means to promote tourism to improve the livelihood of the people living there. After some 2 hours, we passed through Lat Sutunga and further down the road is Kleriat town, the district headquarters of East Jaintia Hills. This district is the center of the coal and cement industry in Meghalaya. Some years back, before the National Green Tribunal ban on coal mining, there used to be heavy traffic for miles and miles on this road, mostly coal trucks plying to Assam and the border with Bangladesh. Today, the road is comparatively empty, much to our satisfaction. From Kleriat, the road snakes downhill to Lomshnong and Sonapyrdi. One notices the greenery surrounding the village as we pass through it before making a stop besides the highway. On both sides of the road, there are houses and arecanut plantations which make up the bulk of the village. Sonapyrdi village has grown alongside the river Lukha with the passage of time. The villagers, since the days of old, depended on the river Lukha for their livelihood. Before the advent of the coal and mining activities, fishing was a major source of income. The fish sold in the markets provided the villagers with enough money to meet not only their day-to-day requirements, but also to support the education of their children. The river was a lifeline as well as a place for recreation for the villagers and visitors from all over the Khasi Jaintia Hills. Its beaches were popular picnic spots. Its fishes attracted anglers from far and wide. The role that the river Lukha played in the lives of the residents of Sonapyrdi used to be a memorable one until the day when it turned blue some 7 years back, and it has been blue once a year ever since then. When the color changes, the fish and all life form disappear from the depths of the river. It is a long wait for the monsoons which come along with the rain and wash the river of its poison, and then life returns for a brief period. The hill slopes on either side of the river, barring the Narpo Wildlife Sanctuary, are farmland where the hard-working villagers cultivate betel nut and betel leaf plants, broom grass and other horticultural crops. The majority of the villagers' livelihood is dependent on cultivation, while some of the educated ones are employed in the government and private enterprises, while others are self-employed. Education is a priority amongst the villagers, and most of the children are schooled in the village lower primary and upper primary school. Others who can afford study in Klariat, Joai and Shillong. It's a close-knit society where community life plays a big role in the day-to-day affairs. I'm on the banks of the river Lukha. We are in Sonapyrdi village. This is a beautiful location. Across the river is the Narpo Wildlife Sanctuary. Join me as we explore this beautiful location. After a while, our hosts take us on a boat ride upstream on the blue waters of the Lukha. In a few weeks from now, this river is going to turn blue. As per the accounts of the locals here, this pollution of the river had started some time back, and it's a very sad state of affairs, sad thing that a beautiful river like this could become lifeless. As of now, this river is, you can see that the water is transparent, it's very clean, but life is very hard to come by. You can see a few fishes here. There were a few handcrafted boats on the river that were used to transport crops from the fields across the river to the village. Fishing was totally absent. The river was clear and transparent, but there were hardly any life that swam in the waters. The rocks and riverbed were covered with an ash-like substance along the entire length of the river in Sonapyrdi. While the forests on the either side were thick and green, it would have been so much better if the river was alive. We've come to this very deep stretch of the river Lukha, and our friends here from Sonapyrdi village told me that when they were young, this was their livelihood. This was the backbone of their livelihood, this river, because the parents used to fish from this river, and the income that this river gave them, the revenue, the money that they sold the fish, used to support not only their day-to-day lives, but even send them to school and college. But as of now, this river, as we go deeper upstream, go more upstream, we can see the blueness of the river. It must have taken a lot of pollutants to make this river blue, because the volume of water here is immense. The anatomy of a river has a few basic and common features, even though every river is unique to its landscape. The beginning of a river is called its headwaters. Some headwaters are springs that come from under the ground, others are marshy areas fed by rain. A river's headwaters is made up of thousands of small streams that flow together, or just a trickle from a spring or pond. In the case of the Lukha River, the tributaries and headwaters are highly polluted by the coal and cement plant activities. What happens in the headwaters is very important to the health of the whole river, because anything that happens upstream affects everything downstream. The Luka along the stretch is unhealthy and not fit for consumption. A lot needs to be done by the stakeholders, including the villagers downstream, the owners of the mines and factories, and the authorities to protect and restore the vitality of the river and make it healthy for future generations. Tourism, according to the young leaders, is a tool to help sustain and protect the environment and provide livelihood in and around Sonapyrdi. If tourism is to be promoted in Sonapyrdi, then the first thing to do is to restore its vitality and control the flow of waste and pollutants in its tributaries and headwaters.
Kajing timu berkomsan jongga society jungi kalau ngembangin pelong ni kini ka jaka ka wak luka kawai ni ke jaka jong kai perthai ba ita tam hang ni hapo ka jala jungi te nang tapat kajing timu hi ke ba kongsan ko jungi kalong bangin la ban penek pansa ya kajing long jingman jong ka wak luka kumba kalong hai ke por pamanswa nama ki poron sa ka wak luka kalong ka khoj adu kata-kata andre mentapat kumba pi imta ka wak luka kamlong su kumba long manswa nama rangi la ban pelong ya kan ka kumkawi nak jaka bitnat ka jaka jungok kai perthai ka tourism place temut kitu ki kena ki bom don kam don jam kila ban kamai ban psah le ban yok kam yok jam kat kum ka jingsam bar ka jinglap jongi ki trai snong nama ngi sang sede te pi nan ong bet ba ka jinglong jiman jong ka luka ka de he na ki karkhana pmi do balat namar ba don ki bru ki ba ong ba kibai pada ki ong ba de da jing ti doyong renga ong ipi ba ya doyong da depti na du sapos na manswa keempat juja khot kum kene jing ja andre de du usna mar jar nyau kala rong puluh kensan kum ne waluka de ndo kata kam senge haman lak sejisnem ka kala bulu be por man tlang kum ne.
After a quick bite of lunch on the banks of the Luka, we set out on the second leg of a journey of exploration to catch a glimpse of the headwaters and tributaries of the Luka, and on the way visit a remote hamlet in the middle of a rainforest.
Bubun hi hangne tiki bubun tang kinong belas ngi ki barep beriang ki barep langkar kripta bat haki polium tu ki podang koi dang ko kene ki sai dikwai untuk ko kwai ki injak ko ki yok jet sa
na kaliang jumpi kumurang ba angne po snong do sarai ba ka snong Sonapyrdi hi kelap dan mo kata ka jing pediang ni ki nong jengok kai perthai ni turis lala pan pediang
kata te ngi persangkat bala tang ba jing pe cengat ki pediang ki lau hundi ki normal ngi la pasang ikat bala ngele namar ka first time jeng ni ta kadi ngong la hi ban le kum ta do kat ba ngi la kan le pasang kat ni
We hire a four-wheel drive pickup truck because that was the only means of transportation that could take us to our next destination.
Okay, we are off the main road now and we are on this dirt track going to Khaddum village. This is a village being inhabited by Mars, and nobody knows exactly the time that they came here and settled in this place, but it must have been 3 to 4 generations ago. This is an interesting ride. Come join me as we go along this dirt track. We have now reached a stretch where it's a steep incline. The gradient is very steep and the roads are, it's a dirt track basically, and coming here during the monsoons would have been impossible. This track needs a four-wheel drive.
It was a rough ride on the dirt track that descended all the way to the river below. This was wild country, and to think that there were human habitation beyond this rugged terrain was unimaginable for us. But again, this was limestone country, the source of the cement plants, and it's just a matter of time before these rough trails and thick forests would be cleared for people to settle in. We crossed the river at Kremskei, where the tributary of the Luka, the Luna River, joins it. The rocks and stones here are bleached and the waters are an unhealthy blue. This far upstream, around 4 to 5 kilometers from Sonapyrdi, the river has changed its color and the waters are absolutely lifeless. We move on across the river boulders and pebbles of the dry portion of the Luka, which has gone underground, until we finally touch the edge of civilization. Women were breaking rocks with hammers on the dry riverbed. We had reached our destination after that adventurous, bumpy four-wheel drive. This is Khaddum village, a unique place isolated from other villages and inhabited by only Mar people. It was a fairly large village with a church, a primary school and a footpath. Spread out on a gradient of a slope, the houses were spread out in twos and threes and surrounded by thick jungle. We met a few villagers and engaged in a conversation to learn more of their origin and how they migrated to these hills.
After that 1 hour drive through a rugged terrain and passing through the riverbed, we have finally reached this village, Khaddum. Khaddum is basically a village which is inhabited by the Mar people.
Most of the youth are schooled and some study in Joa and Shillong. The villagers' main source of livelihood is from cultivation and fishing in the river Lukha, which, unlike the main river downstream, is uncontaminated and has plenty of fish here. The villagers could not give us much information about their origin or village, but they welcomed us to their homes and made us comfortable. We entered a traditional Mar dwelling made from bamboo and wood and also witnessed their weaving skills. Traditionally, the Mars are skillful in weaving shawls and wraparounds. Almost every household has a hand weaving unit where the women weave shawls and garments from the cotton and woolen yarn. The Mar shawl have their own color and design pattern which distinguish them from other tribes. The Khasi and Jaintia Hills inhabitants are basically the matrilineal Khasi and Jaintia people, sharing a common social structure and kinship. Except for the non-matrilineal Biate community in Saipung, this is the only other known non-matrilineal tribe and community living in these hills. The villagers live off the land and the forest in Khaddum village. The river Lukha, which flowed alongside the village, was their lifeline. It provided them with food and water for daily use. Its sand, stones and pebbles were used for construction, and it was a buffer protecting them against wild animals and unwanted guests.
Okay, we are with John here, who is a resident of Khaddum village, and John incidentally studies BSc in St. Edmund's College, BSc Electronics, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, John, can you tell me, in this village of yours, how many households are there? How many houses?
55 maybe.
55.
Yeah,
55.
approximately.
Okay.
Those who have voter ID 426 and
426 voter IDs,
yeah, excluding children
excluding
below
children
18.
and all that. So it'll come
Yeah.
to about 800, 900 people, right?
Yeah,
How do the people live? What is their livelihood? What is the means of livelihood?
mainly from getting fishes from the rivers. Yeah, it's mainly jhum cultivation.
Mainly
jhum cultivation. Yeah,
Okay. And what do you grow in your
such as maize,
maize,
rice,
rice?
pumpkins, and all. Yeah, mostly.
The relationship between the villagers and the river was not only a physical one, but it was a spiritual connection that depended on the tribe's respect for the river. It was a brief stop in this remote corner of the Jaintia Hills, but the visit was a learning experience, an unforgettable one. We took a walk on the pebbled riverbed before we headed on a journey back, scouting for any signs of fish and life. It was not long before we caught sight of green moss on the rocks and stones in the river, as well as tadpoles feeding on the algae. The signs of life were inspiring and wonderful after the earlier ride on the lifeless Lukha downstream.
This is the river Lukha upstream of Sonapyrdi
And this is in Khaddum village. And if you look at the river here, the water is clear, it's not polluted. It's only when the Luna river that flows from Lomshnong joins the Lukha that the river gets polluted and it becomes blue. But if you look at this river here now, there are no traces of any pollutants. It's not blue and it looks normal. We left Khaddum village with an air of hope, optimistic that the river Lukha can be restored and brought back to its past glory of being one of the most beautiful rivers in Jaintia Hills. Sonapyrdi is an example of the resilience of a people who want to shape their future amidst a dying river. For the sake of the next generation, the village is trying to innovate and find solutions to counter the loss in livelihood from the poisoning of the river Lukha. They see some hope in ecotourism, transforming the Lukha and also their lives in the near future. Well, we've come to the end of that incredible road trip, and this day has been all about a journey of discovery and a journey across a river. This is one of the backwaters of our state, and coming to this village has been a wonderful experience, even though the fact remains that we have to protect our rivers, we have to protect our environment. Until we meet again in another village.